Welcome, friends. Hope you're doing well. This is another exciting live webinar where we're going to be doing a deep dive on visa interviews. And we've got a special guest, Swati, who has served in India as a consular officer, conducting those visa interviews. And our focus, our kind of theme today, is really how to answer those toughest questions, how to be prepared, how to really know what to say, because a lot of what people prepare for isn't what the visa officers are looking for. So we've got several questions, things like family, finances, prior refusals, and much more we're going to be covering, and then lots of live Q&A at the end to answer your questions. So really excited. Bring your friends along as well if they got visa interviews coming up. But I'm Rob. Welcome to Chine Coaching. At Chine Coaching, we're all about helping you to thrive and succeed in your cross-cultural journeys. Study abroad, visas and immigration, job search. We have so much great content on our channel, but today's special webinar is helping you get that visa interview approved. We're super excited. These are one of my favorite things to do. I want to welcome our amazing guest, Swati. This is our first time collaborating. So Swati, welcome. Please introduce yourself to our friends today.
Thanks so much, Rob, for having me and Argo on Chine Coaching today. So, just a quick introduction. My name's Swati. I worked with the U.S. government for 14 years, of which I've got 7 years of specialty consular work experience. I've done close to 100,000 different kinds of visa adjudications of all categories. So, non-immigrant visas, immigrant visas, citizenship, and complicated cases. My last assignment was in Mumbai, India. Basically, I'm a former visa officer that's been consulting now for many years with Argo and here to help you out, to help you on your visa journey.
I can't even imagine that you've conducted 100,000 visa interviews. That's
Close to.
mind-boggling. And
It
just how
is.
hard you guys work and how many people are trying to come to America,
Yeah, it is.
So big scale for that. And I think, yeah, you're tuning in from Mumbai. So
Yes,
a
correct.
city I've been to, gotta love the Vada Pav there. I'm currently in Dallas, Texas, but friends who are tuning in, please tell us in the comments where you guys are watching from. So we want to see where you guys are tuning in from. Let us know in the comments. We've got Bangladesh. Welcome, Mohammed. Yeah, tell us in the comments where you guys are tuning in from. Would love to see. And then anyone who's watching the replay as well, replay friends, tell us where you guys are going to be watching from. So I'm here in Texas. We've got Ghana, Nigeria, Iran, China. Welcome, friends. Super exciting. Got a global audience today. More Ghana, Hyderabad. Ooh, the land of biryani. Love it. Welcome, friends. Malawi. Very cool. Great. We've got a fun, diverse group here. Again, at the end, we'll be doing live Q&A. So we want to answer your questions. Get those ready. Myanmar, Cameroon. Oh, this is so fun. Welcome, friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Again, let's dive in now. We're going to be doing a deep dive on how to handle those tough questions for visa interviews. And the very first one that Swati, you're going to help us with is when the visa officers talk about finances. How will you be financed? And especially whether you've done maybe a tuition loan or people who sponsor them. How can people handle this tough question about finances for going abroad on their visas?
Okay, so I'm going to break this up a little bit. So, most importantly, is in a F1, if you're a student visa, one of the biggest things is that are you going to be able to cover the full finances of your first year comfortably and any subsequent years of your program? Okay, and in a B1, B2, which is a tourist business visa, it's more about can you cover this trip and the additional expenses, and will you come back? What are your financial ties? Okay, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to focus a little bit here on students because I think a lot of the audience is F1s, and this question is particularly of importance to them. Um, because in loans, so in your first year you have to, it can be anybody that sponsors you actually. So usually it's your parents or your family members. Sometimes it's a combination, family, loans, and scholarship. So if you're financed and however you're financed, the most important thing is to make sure you tell the visa officer the complete story of how you're financed. So if they ask you, for example, how much is your university going to cost you? And you know that the first year is going to be I don't know, $65,000. Okay, so you would say my first year is going to cost me $65,000 all inclusive, but I have a 10,000 per annum scholarship. I've secured a $30,000 loan, and my parents are able to pay for the remaining $40,000 plus for whatever expenses, because dad does this, mom does this. We have a
Hmm.
savings of XYZ. That's the important way to answer it.
Great, great. And more about what about like a tourist visa, like B1, B2 kind of visa? How are finances viewed differently with that?
Okay, so in that they want to know, your intent and purpose, your financial and home ties is the second biggest thing that they want to know. So in that,
Hmm.
it's not just about how you're financing that particular trip that you're intending to go to, but overall your financial stability in your home country. So if they're asking you who's going to pay for it, you give the full elaborative answer, such as, I'm going to pay for me and my wife and two kids family trip because we go once a year internationally, and I am the director in a painting company, and I make 35 lakhs per year, which is the
Hmm.
equivalent of XYZ $1,000. That is the way you would want to encapsulate it.
Great, that's helpful. I think from what I'm hearing, it's less important how you finance where the money's coming from, but more about how you explain it, how you communicate it, and there's the kind of proof and tangibility to back it up. Does that sound right?
Absolutely. You're 100% on, Robert. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. So, friends, again, it's about clear communication and making sure the visa officer understands the financial situation and that it's enough, that there's no doubt that there'll be any financial hardship or burdens, whether you're studying or going for a holiday trip. That has to be really clear. So, friends, if we're coming across clear, if you can hear us fine, hit the like button on this video to let us know that things are sounding good, looking good. And our next tough question that we're going to try and crack for you guys is whether it's on the documents or even in the visa interview, and it talks about relatives, family members in America. How do people think about and answer this one, Swati?
So most people I find are very scared of this, okay? And you
Mm-hmm.
will usually find that agents will try to mislead you to tell you to not be honest about it. But you really do want to be honest about this in your DS 160. You want to be honest about it in your interview. The important thing is, what kind of relative are they? How did they go? What status are they in? Those are the things that you're going to want to know, at a
Mm-hmm.
minimum. Okay, but you can. A lot of people hesitate in an interview when they're asked because they're not sure how to answer it. So then they'll hesitate a little bit, and then they'll say, "Well, kind of, I have some extended, distant relatives." Okay, so it's better to just be confident about it. If they are, for example, and this is so normal, where you have a potential F1 student going and they've got an H1B brother in the United States. Okay, so you can say that I've got a brother in the United States. He's on an H1B status, going to get his green card soon. He works for Amazon. He lives in Texas, but I really want to go to California XYZ University because this is the right program for me. Okay, so it's about still presenting who you have, and then talking about what it is you actually need this visa for. Or, for example, it is a perfect opportunity for you to talk about your family ties back in your home country. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
um, if you're asked about family in the United States, you don't want to just say yes or no. You always want to elaborate who it is. So you, even if it's extended, okay, so if it's immediate, like a brother, sister, or parent, you can describe it like I said before. But if it's extended, you could still say, yeah, I do have some extended uncles or relatives in the United States. They've never petitioned for an immigrant visa for any of my family members. I'm going for business at this conference in Los Angeles. Or
Mm-hmm.
another great opportunity in that family question is talking about, like I said, the family ties you have in your home country. So, yeah, I do have some very distant relatives over there, but I'm actually going for this family trip out in, Vegas, etc. And Uh, but I live here with my parents. I have two younger siblings. They're both studying in college. I have an older sibling that's married, and she also lives in this country. Okay, so it's an opportunity for you to talk about your familial ties in your home country, even if you're asked about
Mm.
familial ties in the United States.
I love it. That's such a good tip to kind of balance
Yeah,
that. And I think an interesting thing to do is help people understand that different cultures view family different. In
yeah,
America, family is more the nuclear family, mom, dad, kids. It's not really joint family. And extended family is the grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. But a lot of
right,
cultures, especially like in India, like that still might be your immediate family, because
right,
you live in a joint
absolutely.
family or you have your cousin brothers, cousin sisters, or, mama, masi, cha cha chachi, all those kind of
Yeah,
relationships. And so it's like, I love what you said. It's just not short answers, yes and no, but explain it. Explain what they're doing. Make sure you explain that they're legally, doing good things in America, and them being there doesn't impact what you're doing. So I loved how you clarified that. And the more you can clarify and not ramble to the visa officer, the more they're going to understand and be like, oh yeah, this is a great situation.
yeah, that's absolutely true, and I'm glad you brought that up because, like you said, in the cultural context, the Americans are used to your immediate family, and your visa officer is an American. But abroad, in most cultures, there's a lot of extended family that's still kind of your immediate family. So,
Hmm.
what I find here in India, especially, is when in sponsorship, if your uncle is sponsoring your education, a visa officer may be like, and you see this in people that have been denied before, and the visa, when they're giving me the synopsis of why, how their interview went, the visa officer seems almost surprised. Why is your uncle paying for your $100,000 US education, right? They don't
Hmm.
necessarily understand that concept. So it's your responsibility to kind of explain why that's totally normal and why that would be. Okay, so
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
yeah.
All right. So our next tough, tricky question is kind of what's the purpose of your travel? For students, that kind of comes more in the form of why this university, why this degree, for a tourist visa, why are you taking this trip? So kind of, yeah, how can people prep themselves to answer correctly, the purpose of their travel or why they're choosing this university and degree to help the visa officer understand?
Okay, so again, that's a two prong. Okay, I'll cover the
Yeah.
F1 part of it first, which is on the screen that everyone sees. Why this university and degree? So, of what a visa officer is looking for is what are your reasons for choosing this university and degree? What most students make the mistake of is giving the answer that they think the visa officer wants to hear. So it's usually something that they've reviewed on the website, kind of memorized, or talked about ranking, or they'll mention, I've been in touch with this professor XYZ. Those things are actually pretty irrelevant for a visa officer. Okay. They want to
Hmm.
know, well, why do you want a second master's? Or why do you need a second master's? Or why have you gone from bachelor's in computer science to now a totally different field? Or why do you want a master's in the same field? What are you going to do with it later? Or they want to understand that, the question can come in any sort of way. How many universities did you apply to? Or why have you chosen this program, or etc. But a credible student usually applies to several universities. They kind of do their research, they apply, they get into a couple of universities, then they decide what are the reasons that they've wanted to go. That's what a visa officer wants to understand. Is it,
Hmm.
you maybe got into New York and you also got into California, but you decided California because you like the weather better. You have a colleague that's returned and it's an alumni from that university. These are the kinds of personal things that will matter to a visa officer.
Hmm.
And then the second part of that, for a tourist visa. So, sorry, just Rob, repeat the question. So, why would you want to go? Is that what it is?
Yeah, what's the purpose of your travel? Why are you going to this place to do this thing?
Okay. Yeah. So that's like one of the biggest prongs that a visa officer needs to know, right? Your intention and purpose. So a lot
Hmm.
of people make the mistake of just being short in their answers and saying, I'm going for tourism, or I'm going to go visit my H-1B son. And maybe that's the most they say. You have to think that every question is an opportunity. So here it's a beautiful opportunity for you to expand a little bit more and to say something broader. For example, I'm just going to give a hypothetical here. Instead of saying, I'm going to go for tourism with my family, you can elaborate saying, my kids are having their summer break right now. They're in primary and, secondary schools, and I'm going to take them to Disneyland, and we're going to go for 2 weeks. We're going to stay in Orlando for about 5 days. Then we're also going to go and do a trip up to New York, DC, etc., and then fly back. Okay, so that is a clear you in an intention and purpose question on a B1, B2, you want to portray your full synopsis of it, your clear picture of what your general plan is. You don't
Hmm.
also want to be vague about when you're going. So if you're going, in eh, during Christmas holidays, and you say it, you don't just say end of this year. You'll say I'm going to go in December to celebrate Christmas with my partner's family that lives over there and meet them, and I'm going to stay in 2 weeks in Michigan. Then we're going to both fly back together. So it's about that. The whole story, whatever it is what needs to make sense.
Yeah, I love it. And I want to reiterate what Swati said is don't stick with just short, simple, one word, simple phrase answers. It has to be elaborated, communicated, understood, giving the helpful details. And yeah, the worst thing you can do about why this university is just spitting out facts you found online. They don't want the facts. They want to know your reasoning, your purpose, your heart, your plans, what gets you excited. Not that there's this student to teacher ratio and this many grants and all that stuff. Like that doesn't matter. So don't memorize the website facts. Have your story to tell because that's what they want to hear. Um, this has been super helpful for me, friends, as well. If you're finding this helpful, hit the like button on this video to say thanks and cheers to Swati for hanging out with us. And we have a special chai question for our awesome audience who's watching. I want to hear you guys now in the chat. Tell us, where are you going to be giving your visa interview? So I want to know the city. What city is the consulate or embassy that you guys are going to be giving your visa interview coming up, whether it's this summer or later this fall? Let us know in the comments. Yeah, what's the city? What consulate, what embassy are you guys preparing for your visa interview? Would love to see what represents our awesome audience today. So let's see, what do we have here? We got Chennai, awesome. Beijing, Dubai, Accra, Delhi, Colombo. Very cool. Where else? Where else are you guys going to be giving your visa interviews? Chennai, Cairo. Welcome, friends. This is so cool. Muscat, Hyderabad, Kathmandu, Guangzhou, China. Awesome. Welcome, friends. I love people from all over the world tuning in. Oman, Nairobi. Great. Yeah, keep throwing in the location. We're going to keep rolling. We've got a couple more topics we want to help you with, and then soon we'll be jumping into live Q&A. Again, invite your friends to join this webinar so they can also learn and benefit. And also, I'm going to share some links. There's a lot of other great resources with Argo, with Chai and Coaching that can help you guys out, especially if you follow us on social media. So make sure you follow on social media. You're subscribed to our newsletters because there's a lot of other great free content that can help you guys out there. But our next big question that we get that I think people have a lot of vague understanding on is, do their quote unquote admit scores impact their interview? So this is like someone's GPA, GRE score, TOEFL score, IELTS score. Someone might get an admit but just have like an average GPA, or they had a bad semester, or some score that isn't maybe as stellar, and they wonder, do the visa officers see that? Does that impact an interview? What's your take on that, Swati?
Okay, absolutely. So it's interesting because students definitely stress about this much more than visa officers do. Okay, it can be a
Mm-hmm.
question that comes up where the visa officer might ask you, as trying to understand, were you a credible student, about your score? Okay, what your GPA was, or how well did you do on your TOEFL, etc. Okay, but there are many times where I've never ever asked about somebody's test scores. Okay, because the university has a very different that you decide to go to, and all universities have their own respective admissions process. Okay, so they're telling you that yes, you need an SAT, yes, you need a TOEFL, yes, we need your minimum GPA to be this. Okay, you want to, it's great if you have a high GPA and high scores. Okay, but that is not the deciding factor on whether if you're a bona fide student or not, or a credible student
Hmm.
or not. For let's say you have a low score on something. Let's say they ask you about your GPA, okay, and you have a low score on it. But that's where it's important for you to present what are the other things that make you a well-rounded student. So maybe you were
Hmm.
the treasurer of XYZ club. Maybe you led, the community service committee in your high school, or etc. Okay, or maybe in your bachelor's you were, let's say you were studying computer science and there was a club and you were managing or leading that. So these are other things that help in terms of that you can present if you have scores that are kind of low, if you're asked about scores. Okay, but a visa officer will not say that, okay, well, you scored only 1100 on your SAT and sorry, that's the reason you're not going to get a visa. It could be part of the factor, but it's a much more cumulative story. So even if you got a low score, then you can, say, well, I applied to this universe, and I actually see more where students, choose to apply to universities that don't have a lot of admissions test, for example. So
Hmm.
they'll then they're worried, well, I didn't take this test and why. So that's a legitimate concern, but then they can explain, well, that's part of the reason I didn't apply to these three universities, because they didn't require me to take a
Hmm.
SAT, and I was still able to afford the finances. It still has the curriculum I want in the degree I need, et cetera, et cetera. So it can just be a part of the story. It's not a end all be all your test score.
Yeah, and just in my opinion, I feel like because you have the admit, that means you're qualified. So
Yeah, you're
that I
qualified
think
as
is more the proof.
part. Yeah, as more exactly. The universities have their own admissions process. So if they determine that you're okay for this, or your score is okay for them to give you a valid I-20, that's enough. For the visa officer,
Hmm.
you need a valid I-20. And then once you have that valid I-20, you have to justify, why is it this program? Why this university? How are you going to finance it?
Yeah, yeah, great. Thanks for clarifying that. I know that's going to help a lot of people. And now the big one. If you've been refused before, unfortunately, if you've had a denial before, and they ask you, you know, why were you refused before? What do people need to think about when trying to answer this on maybe a second or third attempt visa interview?
Sure. I think I know, most people are very, very scared of this. Why were you denied before? Or it can come in another form, which is, what has changed? And I would say 95% of the people I've ever dealt with are mostly scared of these questions. Okay. But change the perspective, because these are actually beautiful opportunities for you. It's an open-ended question. Okay. They're giving you the platform to be able to present your story now. A visa
Mm,
officer is never expecting you to know exactly why you're denied, because you don't know exactly why you're denied. That's half of our job, is kind of, if you've been denied, helping you understand what could have gone wrong, right? And
yeah,
how you
it's
can
kind of a
change
trick question a little bit.
that. Right. Most people think that, but if you think of it as an opportunity, it can do really well for you. Okay. Because just now, okay, that a visa officer is not expecting you to know exactly why you got denied. They have their notes in the system from why you were approved or why you were denied. All right, you only get a section 214B letter, which is a very generic letter which says, home ties, et cetera, right? So
Hmm.
it's not specific to your case. So most people think that I got asked this question last, I answered this way, and therefore, and then they gave me that slip. It's never that last question. I promise you that determines yes or no. It's you that last question, the visa officers usually determined already if you're approved or denied before that last question. And I can go into
Hmm.
that, a lot more, but it's not necessary. So it's more about you can just say in that time, you don't want to harp on that, because you don't know, right? So the point of it being an opportunity is saying, if you get asked, why do you think you were denied before? You can say, for example, if in your case it was, I was extremely nervous and therefore I couldn't even explain that I had a $10,000 scholarship. And, I really want to do this. So you can just briefly kind of guess and state that, but then talk about why you want the still visa, why you're still credible for
Mm.
it. Okay, same thing for a B1, B2. Okay, so why were you denied before? You can say, well, I just wasn't prepared and I didn't realize that I needed to explain how I was financing this trip. But I'm actually, when I said I'm a diamond dealer, I actually own my own diamond shop and retail center, and I'm a producer. Okay, so it's more about then actually presenting what it is that makes you stable qualified for that B1, B2, or for that F1.
Mm.
Okay, you
Yeah.
move right into it is the goal. You just briefly address it. They're not really looking for you to have a magic answer that justifies what they see in their system. Okay, they're just looking for you. It's just an opportunity for you to then now say, hey, I was denied, but this is why I'm approved today. Like, this is why you should approve me now. This is why I'm still
Hmm.
qualified as an F1 or a B1, B2, or any other category.
Fantastic. I love it. And when it comes to the documents, also a question I get from friends is, "Hey, on the DS 160 or other documents," and it says if you've been previously refused, or how do they need to fill that out? I my guess is if it's been a 214B, that's just the answer they put in, right? Or is there something else they need to do in the documents when it comes to a previous refusal? Try and help us out there.
Yeah, no, that's a great question because we get that a lot. So, and we see a lot of people's DS-160s and and their reason, they don't either know what to put, or when they've sent us something that's a draft, it's like really long. Okay. So they're not really going to see that. It's sufficient enough just to put yes, 214B, March 2020, 2024. Okay. And, or if you had more than that, 214B, March 2024, May 2022. Okay. That's good enough. Okay. But you can also use it as a opportunity to present yourself a little bit more. So you can leave it like that, or say 214B, March 2024, but I'm still going to pursue my master's in computer science at Rochester University. um I'm just, even that's enough. Okay,
Hmm.
so that's it. Okay, because you're still there trying to present for your F1 case and your master's because you got denied the first time. Now you're still going to that same university, so you can just use it as a platform to present a little bit about why you're still there. Okay, why you're still qualified. And that's about it. Okay, that whole long history that most people tend to put, especially when they don't know why they were denied, they're just guessing also themselves, right? So
Hmm.
the visa officer is not going to read all of that. They're going to want, if they ask you about why do you think you got denied, they're going to want to hear it from you. But then you go back to the answer in the previous question that we discussed about, you just briefly describe it and then move on to why you're actually there.
Beautiful. I love it. And friends, Swati again, she's a former visa officer, having done hundreds of thousands, she said, 100K visa interviews. And she currently works with Argo Visa, one of our Chai and Coaching approved partners. So, Swati, briefly, before we jump into the live Q&A, tell people how Argo Visa can help people either bounce back from a refusal or even just be best prepared not to get a refusal at all and just ace that interview. And how can you guys help our friends out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love working with Argo because we really are, we're the biggest team of ex visa officers that you'll ever find. We've worked all over the world. We speak a ton of different kinds of languages. We've done minimum 10,000 interviews to closer to me, which is nearly 100,000 in the course of career. So we've done them all. Okay. So we've seen all categories of visas between the set of officers that we have. So when you kind of sign up with us, our team makes sure that you get this, timing slot that you want per the or the officer that you want, the language that you need, maybe the region that they've served in, the expertise that they have, maybe in an H-1B or an E visa or an L-1 visa or an O visa, or etc. etc. So the team matches you up with the right kind of officer, based on the schedule that you want and the time that you want. You are also able to choose whether you want an half an hour consult. Do you want 45 minutes so you can get one mock in? Do you need to, 1 hour? And we highly recommend, if you've had a denial or any sort of complicated issue, you should at a minimum go for 45 minutes. But that's, we are there. We get your questionnaire. We highly recommend you fill out the questionnaire. We all review that questionnaire even before we jump on that consult. So I personally review that questionnaire as soon as it comes in, even if my consult date is with you is several days out. And then I review it again. I make sure if you send any documents ahead of time, I review those. I'm ready to be there for you, as so are all the visa officers, the ex visa officers. They've reviewed your information. They are there to help you understand where you've gone wrong. How you can make your case better. They're there to help you understand what are the strengths that you have. How can you present them in a way that is understandable and receptive to a visa officer? Because we are all
Mm,
ex visa officers that have been on the line and know what we're looking for, right? So we know what your next visa officer is looking for, and therefore we're able to explain it to you, unlike any other source you would find on the outside. For example, a lot of people go to Telegram chats or WhatsApp chats or the internet or Google
yeah.
or
A lot of
agents,
sketchy answers out
etc.
there.
And there's a lot of misinformation. So we get clients that have, gone through all of it, and then they come to us because they've been denied. They just can't wrap their heads around it. So come to us. If you've never had a visa interview, that's the best time to actually come to us, because then
Hmm.
you can increase your chances just enormously, right? But if you've had any sort of issue or anything like that, then we're still the resource you want to come to. And I can't tell you how many clients have also gone, in complicated cases, have gone to lawyers and dealt with lawyers for different kinds of things, and they still, with their attorneys or with other partners, still end up consulting with us, because we're able to provide such a different insider perspective that is priceless, really. So that's how, Argo can help you. Please do reach out to us. We're at hello@argovisa.com. You just send us a message and, let us know what your questions and concerns are, what we can help you with, and if you'd like a consult, and our team will help you out and set you up with the right person.
Yeah, so I put the link in the
Yeah.
chat and the video description for where you guys can get started. I think one of the most valuable things you guys could do is a mock interview, a practice interview with an Argo
Hmm.
officer, because they're going to guide you, prep you, help you tweak your answers, fix the gaps, remove those red
Yeah.
flags, and how to tell your story in a way that's going to make sense. That's the most
Yeah.
powerful thing you can do. And well, they have a great free tool called the Visa Checkup Tool. Again, click the link and that'll take you there on the webpage. Click up at the top, the Visa Checkup Tool. And it's a cool little AI chatbot where you answer about 10, 12 questions about who you are, your situation, your scenario, the visa you're applying for. And then based on all your data, it's going to give you a score, a green, yellow, or red. Green means you're good to go. Yellow means maybe not sure. Red means concerned. And this could even help you gauge whether you want to take deeper steps to get help, coaching, mock interviews. So check out that Visa Checkup Tool, kind of
Yeah.
assess your situation. That's really helped a lot of people. I like going on there and just checking it out. I learn a lot from it too. And it's all based on the experience of these expert former visa officers. So
Yeah.
really go
I'm
check
so
that
glad.
out.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up the mock interviews, because I was remiss in that. That's one of the biggest value added services we would provide, because I
Hmm.
know agents kind of give you, these are the questions you're going to get asked, but it's actually completely different. So, or maybe in chats you've kind of seen, this is what I got asked, but doesn't mean that that's what's going to be your interview. Okay, so a
Yes.
mock interview is so so important, because it gives us as ex visa officers, where's your baseline? Like, we're already telling you the strategy. Okay, we're telling you the theory of it. We're giving you the mock interview to put it into practice, right? Then we're going to help
Hmm.
you understand, well, what did you do well and what can you do better, and how do you pull up the strengths that we've already pointed out and place them into your interview, even if you're not asked about that. So that's a really major skill to be able to have. So at a
Mm-hmm.
minimum, you want to try to get a one mock interview. And there's so many clients that actually do follow-up consultations just to do mock interview practice, because that is usually, especially if you've been denied, that is the difference in a yes or a no. I can't
Mm-hmm.
emphasize how important mock interviews are.
Yeah, I love it. So check them out. You've got the links. And thank you guys for your patience and joining us. Now is my favorite part, the live Q&A. A couple ground rules. First of all, when you guys ask your questions in the comments in the chat, just ask it one time. If you ask the question again and again and again and block up the chat, we're not going to choose that one. And then also, super chats will be prioritized. I know we're going to do my best to cover as many questions as we can, a variety of topics as well. But if you have a burning question that you want answered by Swati today, it's got to be a super chat. We're going to prioritize those and give you guys as much help as we can today. So thanks for being here, and let's get this party started. Let's see here. Okay, Swati, Rahul is asking, is it true that visa refusal can have a large impact on future applications, especially after the refusal, the officer will use prior decision to guide their question and direction of the interview?
Okay, so Rahul, absolutely, that the previous interview notes are going to be there. Okay, so if you've been denied before, when you come up for your new interview, when they pull up your new DS-160, they're also going to see your previous refusal. Okay, so it is absolutely normal if a visa officer asks you something about that. Okay, you should be prepared to answer that. It's not that just because you got denied before that you're automatically going to get denied again. That is not the case. You're still going to get a full interview, but the officer will take into account what has happened, especially if it is a recent refusal. That's why that change question usually comes for the people that have just recently been refused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're definitely going to take into consideration what happened in previous, visa interviews, and whenever you come again the next time.
Yeah,
So it's never
absolutely.
just a fresh start whenever you've been refused.
Yeah, and this is really important for, people who have maybe misrepresented on their DS-160 before or in their interview and said something about the family not being in the States, or vice versa, being in the States, and now in their interview they're saying they're not in the States, etc. So you don't want to mismatch your stories. It should still be
Mm-hmm.
honest. It should still make sense. And if it doesn't, then you should be able to justify it.
Yeah. All right. Mohammed's asking, they have siblings in the U.S. who's a U.S. citizen, parents who are legal permanent residents. How does that impact? How can they prepare for an F1 visa interview with this kind of family situation?
Okay, so Mohammed, this will be a little tough for sure, because it sounds like a lot of your ties, especially your familiar ties, are in the United States. Okay, and it can also depend on maybe what age you are. If you're, for example, seeking a bachelor's, you might. If there are ulterior motives for you needing this visa, and a visa officer is thinking that, then they could refuse your F1, thinking that you're not actually a genuine student. So there's a complicated section of law called CSPA, Child Status Protection Act, where children age out at a certain age of 21, and then they can't join their family. And when sometimes families know this, they try to get their kids to go on an F1. So in this
Mm-hmm.
situation, when an officer can perceive that, it's usually a lot tougher. You will have to try to justify again why, despite your family being so much of your family being in the United States, why you still need whatever degree you're pursuing, why you're still a legitimate student, and why would you leave the United States upon your completion of your degree and return to your home country, especially if your
Mm-hmm.
family's in the US. So that's going to be really important.
Great. Thanks so much. All right. This is a good one. The question is, what's the best way to answer what has changed, or how can I deal with an unfriendly, scary looking, or quote unquote mean visa officer? None of you guys are mean and scary, right? But I know they're
Oh
maybe
my
intimidating, to people who are nervous. So what are your thoughts on this one, Swati?
Okay, so okay, so I know a lot of people perceive visa officers as they're in a good mood or they're in a bad mood or they're denying everybody, okay? But it's not
Mhm.
actually that, okay? You have to think
Yeah.
about it. I was on the consulate line in Mumbai doing 100 plus interviews a day, sometimes 150 when we were
Wow.
backlogged. It is very tiring, okay? So if the visa officer is getting 100 interviews where people are giving one word answers and the officer is having to try to pull teeth from them, not able to approve you, even though they want to approve you, but they have to be able to justify it, but you're not giving any reasons to justify it. It can get very frustrating. It can get very exhausting. Okay. So it's a lot of factors that go into what you perceive as a mean visa officer. You know, you have to remember, this is not a rocket science. It is not something that a visa officer is typing in and putting into a system and then it's spurting out a yes, you're approved, or no, you're denied. It's a human science, right? So there's
Mhm.
it's human error. But the more important thing that you have to remember is that in the visa interview, so many people focus on documents. It's not about your documents. It's a conversation, a very brief conversation that you're going to have with that visa officer. And therefore, it needs to be a very natural, flowing conversation. It should not be rehearsed. It should not be, just so short where it frustrates the visa officer. So there are a lot of things that you can do that help yourself in any kind of question you get asked, even if it's what has changed question. And I think earlier in the webinar, I've already addressed, if you've been denied before or what has
Mhm.
changed. So, yeah, I'll leave that at that.
Great. Great. Thanks for sharing some thoughts on that one. That's a fun one. All right. Crispin's asking, in April, they applied for a B1 visa, but were not able to get a visa interview. Now they've applied for an F1 visa and they have their interview coming up in July. Should they be worried? And does not being able to get a previous visa interview impact a future or different visa interview?
Okay, Crispin. Actually, no. So that's fine. You can still have a B1, B2 visa interview in process, or even that visa, and still have that F1. Okay, so if your F1 visa date comes up sooner, then you would do that F1, justify why you're a credible student. And later, if your B1 visa interview appointment comes up and you still want that B1, B2, then you would appear for that interview and justify why you would be qualified for a B1, B2. And it is totally possible for people to have a couple of different kinds of visas.
Hmm. Great. All right. Choi's asking, they were rejected 3 years ago. Um, in terms of explaining why rejected, is this, they put 214B in 2021. I've graduated, worked, able to sponsor myself, and have more international travel. What's your thought on something like that?
Yeah, Choi, I think that's a good way to, especially in the DS 160, to answer that short and sweet in a way that you're telling them 214B when, and then also giving a platform for what has changed. This is a beautiful way to tell them these are the things now that have changed. I've now graduated, I've worked, able to sponsor myself. Maybe the only additional thing that you can put is, it sounds, when you say worked, does that mean that you're not working anymore? So, for example, if you're still working, I would just maybe edit that a little bit. You know, working still in, XYZ industry, if that's the case.
Great. This is actually kind of a common question that I've gotten is people have applied and gotten the DV lottery, but didn't accept it, did not attend. That's a more immigrant visa. Now they're,
Hmm.
I'm guessing, going for F1, DS 160. So going from immigrant to non-immigrant, how does that impact? How can people communicate that?
Yeah, I see this a lot from especially clients from Africa. This is a very common
Hmm.
thing because a lot of them qualify for TVs and they apply for it. So, yes, you're absolutely right, Rob, that see the section of law when you're applying for non-immigrant visa, it's 214B that generally applies to you, where when you get denied, that's the letter that you get. So the presumption is you're an intending immigrant. You're already guilty before being innocent in the interview, right? So you have to prove otherwise. But when you have a diversity visa already pending, that is showing that your intention is to immigrate to the United States. So when you have something that you've already done, it's different if you've maybe had the F1 first and then maybe you did the DV. Okay. But in this case, you've done the DV first, which says that I do want to get my green card if I win this lottery. And then now you're saying I'm an F1 and I'm going to come back to my country after I finish studying XYZ. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
in those cases, it's very normal that a visa officer would wonder and ask you why, well, why did you do the DV, or why would you come back to your country after you finish this degree? You have to be able to justify, because it's a very legitimate question. It does not mean blanket that you would get denied just because you have a DV. Okay, so that is
Mm-hmm.
not a blanket denial, because yes, the DV process will take a while. So in some cases, you could justify that. You will, I'm now going to pursue my master's because um, I need this to get that promotion. I've got a guaranteed position back in my country. The DV may or may not come through, and at that time I'll
Mm-hmm.
see in the future, but at least I've got a guaranteed job with a higher salary when I come back. And the rest of my family's still here. We'll take a call on the DV when it comes through, if and when. Right. So it's about explaining it in a way that kind of can make sense, but it is a different, it's a tougher baseline to start with if you do have a DV and you're applying for a non-immigrant visa.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Hmm.
All right. Buzzard has got a good question. So they've been having difficulty. They got a refusal and then trying to get slots. And, some places it's really tough to get visa interview slots in Bangladesh. So they're picking a different country now, Colombo, Sri Lanka. Is that a red flag to what they kind of a third country interview?
National.
What are your,
Right.
or yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Okay, so the game has totally changed since COVID and the backlog basically worldwide. So before it would have been a bigger red flag if you had been applying out of your jurisdiction even. Okay. But then
Mm-hmm.
that expanded to you can apply within anywhere in your country. And now because of the backlog, it's anywhere that you get a visa appointment. Okay. So now being a TCN, which is a third country national, is a lot more
Mm-hmm.
normal. But if you and it's just very very normal. So and especially because of visa appointment wait times, right? So India, for example, is really backlogged in
Mm-hmm.
general for their appointments. So a lot of people do go somewhere else for their tourist visa because they can do so. They have a more immediate need to travel, or for their F1 or anything. So in whatever category you're applying, if you still decide to go to a different country or a different jurisdiction, you still want to be able to justify why you were there. Before, visa officers used to perceive it a lot more like your visa shopping. So within India, if you apply to Mumbai, you didn't get it, so now you're going to try your luck at Hyderabad, or then you're going to go to Delhi because the visa officers are less mean or anything like that, right? So then a visa officer perceives that as you're just trying your luck. Nothing's actually
Mm-hmm.
changed in you being a credible student. Okay, so they see right through that. But now when you go to a different place and they're asking you, well, why are you here in Sri Lanka if you're from Bangladesh? Then you would want to justify that saying, well, my classes start in September, and in Dhaka I can't get an appointment until December. I don't want to miss the beginning of my master's program because it's only an 18-month program. I need to finish it so I can rejoin my work. Okay, and Sri Lanka had appointment dates, and therefore I'm applying here. Or if you're B1, B2, you still wanted to be able to justify the ties that you would have to your own country versus if you're applying in a different country. It gets harder for visa officers to assess those cultural ties if they're from somewhere else. That's why it gets a little bit trickier
Mm-hmm.
for people, because they won't, if you're saying I make 35 lakhs per annum and you're saying that in another country where they don't even use lakhs and you don't convert it, then they don't have an understanding, a base of what that is. That's why it can get a little bit more difficult also.
Yeah, no, great explanation on that. Again, it's all about communication and understanding with these kind of tricky situations. All right. Pavinder's asking, he's guessing that his visa was denied because he's got an uncle as a US citizen who is sponsoring his education and also applied to a community college. If he's reapplying with his parent sponsorship and getting an advocate in a university, will that have an impact? Will that change? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so Pravinder, this is a good question. It's a kind of a common question where a lot of students think that you're assuming why you got denied. These are the reasons.
Hmm.
Okay, so it's definitely cumulative why you got denied. It's not just because your uncle is a citizen or he was sponsoring or because you were going to community college, but all of the factors together could definitely make an impact for your denial. Okay, so a lot of people just think, well, I didn't get into that one, therefore I'm just going to change the university and I'll be fine. But they don't try to work on understanding how to explain to a visa officer why they still want this degree or why did they change from the community college to the university. That is the more important thing. Just now, that because you've changed to parent sponsorship and admit to a university will not in itself make you approvable. You will now need to, because they'll still have in the notes, that your uncle was paying, you were going to go to community college, etc. Now you want to explain to the visa officer, well, how come your uncle's not paying anymore, and how are your parents able to pay for that, and why weren't they paying before? And okay, so why didn't you do it in university before, or why now this university? So it can
Hmm.
be it's not an automatic golden ticket. It can be a little bit more complicated. Just you thinking that I'm going to change this, I'm going to get a yes. It's not that. You still have to justify why the switch now.
Great. Thanks so much. Rajesh is asking an interesting question here. Um, Going for a tourist visa, but traveling without their family, no spouse and kids, would that be a red flag or an issue when appearing for a tourist visa interview?
So Rajesh, this is totally case dependent. I mean, I'd have to know more because it's really, really case dependent. There's so many people who go, and it's being having your wife and your kids still here is part of your ties. Okay, but if your reason for traveling is because you're going, I've had this happen, where people they're going for the 50th, the birthday party for all their friends or something like that, and it's just, or their bachelor party. It's a reason why it would make sense why your other family members are not traveling, right? So
Hmm.
that would be more important. But if you're saying that you're going to go for tourism and you've never been to the US before, and you're going to go New York, DC, LA, San Francisco, et cetera, then it would be more like, well, why aren't you taking your wife and your kids? Okay, so then you have to justify, well, why aren't they traveling? And a lot of times it's justifiable. My kids are
Hmm.
still in school, they don't have vacation then, or I am going to combine this. I'm going to see a friend while I'm out in Los Angeles, but I'm really going to go for also a business meeting with a potential investor. Okay, so
Yeah.
it can make a lot of sense. But it's not automatic. But if you're going for just tourism and you don't have any travel, etc., or if you've always traveled with your family, then a visa officer will wonder, well, why aren't you taking them? But it's
Yeah.
just
So
because
he
you're not
sent a
taking them doesn't
clarifying here.
mean.
So without the family and then mentioning visiting friends and tourism together as well, is that okay to say that the reason is friends and tourism?
Yes, but you still want to justify, why are your wife and children not also going on this tourism vacation with you to visit the friends and tourism for the tourism?
Hmm. Yeah. So explain why you're going by yourself, why not your
Hmm.
family, and
Hmm.
yeah, who those friends are, what kind of things you're going to be doing.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Communication, making sure your story makes sense. That's
Yes.
the, everyone's got a unique situation. It's your job to make it make sense and be understandable to the visa
Yeah,
officer.
absolutely.
So, yeah. Um so I think this one's kind of similar to that. They're asking, when discussing my itinerary during the interview, is it best to have detailed plans for each day, or should I allow flexibility and things being more spontaneous? What is a visa officer looking for?
Yeah, so they're not looking for your day to day, hour by hour itinerary. They're looking for what is your overall plan. So you can be a broader about this. So, for example, if you're, I'm going to the United States to attend this trade expo in Las Vegas. That's going to be from May 15th to the 20th. I will get there a few days in advance to get over jet lag, and then me and my boss are going to fly back together. We'll be staying in the hotel at the convention center and attending the conferences. Okay, so that would be enough, right? It gives a full idea of what you're going to do. They don't need to know your hour by hour, day to day, what is the conference schedule, for example. Okay, the same kind of theory would apply in terms of even if you're just doing tourism. So if it is, I'm going with me and my family to visit, upstate, whatever, the Northeast, and we're also going to do Disney. So then it has to still make sense, right? So it doesn't need to
Mhm.
be May 12th through and 13th, we're going to be in New York for 2 days at this hotel. Then May 14th to 15th, we're going to be in Washington, D.C. at this hotel. The visa officer doesn't have time for that kind of detail anyway, okay? It's more about the broad strokes of your itinerary.
Great. And this is a good one from Farah. Is it appropriate to wear a uniform to my F1 visa interview? And could this affect the outcome of my visa application? Or kind of broader question is, what should I wear or not wear to my F1 visa interview?
Yeah, absolutely good question. Okay, so in general, you want to wear, no matter what kind of visa you're applying for, I recommend you wear something that you feel really good in, okay, that you feel confident in, and you feel that, okay, I've got this, right? That helps you give that little pep and you feel that you look good in, right? But in terms of dress otherwise, if you're a, a you just graduated high school and you're going for your bachelor's degree, they're not expecting you to come in a uniform or suit and tie. You're a student. It's very normal that they would expect you to show up in jeans. Now, you don't want those jeans
Hmm.
to be ripped jeans, right? You still want to have some decorum, right? You would want to wear maybe a jeans and a nice t-shirt or a polo, something like that. So if you're going for a lot of, I get this question a lot, surprisingly, for people in their mid 30s that are now going for their masters, and they're working professionals, right? So but they're still students, but they're working professionals. So for them, I recommend, and in general, maybe a business casual would be good, because you're still, you are a working professional, even if you're now going for a student visa, because you're in your mid 30s, you have 10 years of work experience under your belt. So you think of it like that, but you still want to be confident in it. Make sure it is obviously decent, respectful, and something you feel good in. But you do not need to have a uniform. They don't expect you to have a business suit on or anything like that. If a uniform makes you feel good because you wore it in your private school, and that's normal for you to wear a uniform and you feel better in it, then that's fine. But it's not an expectation from the consulate.
Awesome. Thanks, Swati. We just crossed the hour. Do you have time for just a couple more questions?
Yeah, just a couple more.
Okay. All right. Well, we got a couple really here that we'll wrap up here. I wanted to address Bobby's here. I want to visit my spouse who's currently on F1 visa for about 4 weeks or a month. Um, and then he's going to come back to his home for work. So for this trip, should he do a tourist visa, B1, B2, or F2 spouse dependent visa, which is helpful for his chances?
Okay, so Bobby, if you partly will depend on your case history of your wife. So in that time of her interview, did she present that she was married with kids, and were the spouse not joining, or were they not going to apply for F2? Is there something in the notes that could then affect you? So that's one thing that you'll want to check. But assuming it's not the case, then if you're going to go for periodic times while she's pursuing her degree, then an F2 probably makes more sense if you're going to be spending more time over there than back in your home country. But a B1, B2 is, kind of shorter trips, and it's a multiple entry 10-year visa, whereas your F2 would be for the duration of status for your wife's visa. So either way, you'd want to justify it. In the F2, you still want to justify the bona fides of your relationship, right? In a B1, B2, it's not about the bona fides of your relationship. It's more about your intent and purpose. What are your financial and home ties, and why would you come back? So it could be either. It'll depend on your particular situation, which I know we won't have time to get into now, but it'll depend on the length and etc.
Great. And I think this one's really helpful too. Abigion's asking, they want to be a pilot, but previously graduated in computer science. How can they help explain to the visa officer a drastic change in career? Anyone who's making a big career pivot, how do they talk about that to a visa officer?
Okay, yeah, this is a very good question because this is more frequent than not. So, a lot of times, somebody studied something because maybe their parents made them do it. It's not really their passion. Then they've decided that, or they realized that this is my passion. This is why I'm going to pursue it. That passion is what needs to come across at the visa interview to justify, well, why is this shift, or why did you leave your computer science degree midstream? Why didn't you complete it? Because you still want to show the visa officer you're a credible student, right? But there are so many sincere students that are actually genuinely, interested in something totally different than what they were maybe forced to study or recommended to study, for example, right? So, and now they're taking the chance to do what they want to do. So, bring that story to the forefront is what's really
Hmm.
important, right? At the visa interview, make it personal, actually, and then it will make a lot more sense to a visa officer. Because remember, I said we're humans, right? It's a human science, all right? So the other thing about this is that if so computer science, so like you see this in because of the boom in AI, for example, we see a lot of at master people that are applying for master's degree in data analytics and computer science and
Hmm.
et cetera, with specialized programs in AI and things like that. Okay, but they might have not done exactly that same kind of degree. So in this kind of scenario, it could be because it's the industry, right? Like for better job opportunities, right? So I studied um I studied I don't know. I studied architecture, but I didn't, like I was never really interested in it. And on the side, I was always taking online courses in computers, computer programming, and et cetera, et cetera. I've done an internship at this company, and I now, because AI really interests me, I really want to pursue this master's degree in it because with that, I want to work for this consulting firm. So it can still make sense, but you have to be able to make it make sense, right?
Yeah, and I think one thing that's helpful to know in America, it's much more normal to shift and change. In
Yes.
America, people change their degrees, they change their careers many times. So in America, it's more acceptable to change. It's just important for you to say why.
Yes,
So and
absolutely.
help them understand. But I think that was a great answer. And my friends, I learned so much. Hit that like button to give some love, say cheers and thanks to Swati. Give her some love in the comments, and make sure you guys go check out Argo Visa. Again, the Mark interviews that they offer are incredible. Their visa checkup tool is a great stepping stone to kind of just assess your situation and connect with people like Swati who've done thousands and thousands of visa interviews who can help you fix a denial or be prepared so you never have to face a denial and can get approved. So I just want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate this. And this was so much fun.
You're welcome. I totally enjoyed being on with you guys. So I hope it was helpful for all of you. And please do reach out to us at hello@argovisa.com. You can get set up with any of us to help you out. We look
Yeah,
forward
we've
to
got
seeing you.
links that you guys can connect with them there, get that help. And yeah, when you guys get those visas approved, share the stories, and we want to celebrate that success with you. See everyone next time. Thanks for joining us, being part of our amazing Chine coaching community. Cheers, everyone. Have a great
Bye
week.
bye.